I have it somewhere in here. There we go. All right, so we're going to cover 2 games that were played from in the Las Vegas Chess Festival in round 3. We're going to be covering the games of Levy Rozman and also Hans Niemann. Additionally, there is one other game that I want to go over first. So I'm going to give you guys the game that I saw last night. So instead of the Levy game, someone will tell me what this game was later on down the road, who the players were that were on the board that played it. But the game that I saw last night that Levy Rozman played against Eduard Hakobian was e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, bishop c5, d3, knight f6, bishop to g5, h6. All pretty standard, very normal game. White went bishop to e3, black trades, white takes. Very standard. d6 castles. Very, very normal kind of game. Bishop to e6, bishop to b3 was played in the game. I think bishop b3 was played. And now black plays queen to d7, white plays knight b d2. Levy castled here. And now in this position, I believe the move queen to e1 was played, or was it knight c4? I'm trying to remember the exact move order. But anyway, let's just assume it was knight c4. No, sorry, it wasn't knight c4. Wait a second. How did the game go? It was something like knight wait, one second. Let me get it right. I think it was knight a5, bishop b3. It was something like this, bishop d7, queen here, castles. Some position basically like this. And let me make a couple of random moves just to get the right tempo position. So this was the position in the game. All right, so I know I have the move orders wrong and everything, but this was the position. And in this position, Levy played a very bad move. Levy decided to play pawn to g5 here. This is a huge mistake here, because after you play pawn to g5, as you guys will see, after white plays knight takes e5, pawn takes knight, rook takes f6, white is up a pawn. He can play queen f2, rook f1, and it's completely crushing. However, as I'm watching this, I remember watching this because I was watching it live. I was just eating my dinner. And I was like, Levy, what WTF? What are you doing, man? What is G5? Like, seriously, are you like, I mean, maybe you're tired or something, but I really don't know what's wrong with you, because G5 is an impossible move to play. However, then his opponent plays this move, pawn to G3. And this left me really scratching my head, because pawn to G3 is obviously a very, very weird move, and it does nothing. And then I was even more perplexed when I saw the move bishop to h3 being played here, because once again, Levy proceeds to hang the pawn on e5. And again, you proceed to hang the pawn on e5, and here white takes the pawn. Of course, here black can play queen to e7, and he's completely fine. But after bishop to h3, knight takes e5 is played here. And now black takes, white takes on f6. And now I believe the move here, if I'm not mistaken, was let me try to remember. I think it was, yeah, it was rook to f8, queen to a5, queen to e7 was played here. And now white went rook f2, black played king to b8, supporting the pawn on a7, white plays a3. Now Levy correctly plays f5, maybe not correctly, but it's a move that can be played. At any rate, I remember seeing this, and then sure enough, white plays queen to b4, which really left me confused, because obviously in this position, white should probably trade the pawns on f5. Instead, queen b4 is played, and now pawn to c5 is played by Levy. Very, very good move. But now the move that was played by white was queen e1, pawn takes e4, and I'm sure that white's in some trouble here, because after takes, rook f2, queen f2, rook f8, there always are checkmating patterns on like f1. There's some grip that black has here. However, let me go back. Sorry, let me go back. Wait. That was just spoiler. Sorry. Anyway, what was the position? Sorry, this was the position. So after f5 here, queen to b4 is played. c5, queen to e1 takes. And now here, white played an even more perplexing move. White now played rook to d1. And it's now when I saw rook to d1, I was like, what is rook to d1? This is a very, very strange move. I mean, white is 2187. I mean, this move makes no sense. So Levy plays rook f2. So I'm like, okay, Levy's going to win the game. Now he's doing well. And then I see white play king takes f2. And now I begin to become really confused. Like, how does a 2187 play king takes f2? Very illogical move. Queen takes f2 is obviously the best capture, but he takes. And now rook to f8 is played. And now white plays king to e2. An even stranger move here, because now after bishop to g4, you're very simply going to lose material. So king d2 is played. Black takes on d1. White plays queen takes. I think this was the order. I could be wrong, but pawn takes, queen f6. I think it was like queen to h5, something like queen f1, queen takes h6, rook f2. And basically in this position, Levy or his opponent resigned, although I think somehow the king was on c2, not d2, but that doesn't really matter, because after king c3, queen c1, black is going to win the game. So I remember seeing this game, and I was really, I was struggling last night and this morning, because I already promised you guys that I'd do a recap of the game. So I was really struggling, because I was thinking, well, how do I put it nicely? Because obviously I was very, very disappointed by this game. I was disappointed by g5. I expect Levy to play a better move than that. And g3 was even more bizarre. So I was trying to think how it'd be polite, but as you guys now know, this turned out to be a troll game. The relay was incorrect, and this was not Levy's game from last night. It was in fact a game played between two 1100s. So I will reserve all my criticism that I was going to give to Levy and his opponent, or at least I'll refrain until we see the true game that occurred between Eduard Jacobian and Levy Rozman last night from the National Open in Las Vegas. So the actual game went e4. c6. Now this is the first time I'm seeing the game too, you guys, so we'll see how it goes. So e4, c6, d4, d5. So true to form, Levy plays the Caro Kann. He does not play e4, e5. And I remember I was also thinking in the game, I was like, what on earth was e4, e5? Like, Levy doesn't play that. Why is he playing e4, e5 against a 2100? So anyway, it goes d5. So e5, bishop f5 is played. Knight d2, e6. Pretty standard theory here. Knight b3, knight d7, knight f3, h6. Again, all pretty normal. Objectively, this is a little bit dubious, this line that Levy played. Again, at this level, though, 23 and 2100, it's not something where I would expect pure precision in the way that a 2700 plus could play. Because, again, as you guys will see, it does give white a significant advantage. So bishop e2, knight e7 castles, g5, bishop to e3, bishop g7, knight e1. Okay, this is already kind of starting to go the wrong direction. I believe, if I remember correctly, you're supposed to play knight e1 and bishop d3 immediately, and you don't need to play this bishop e3 move. It's some knight e1 bishop d3 or knight e1 c3 and bishop d3, but this bishop e3 move is definitely not the most precise move. So bishop g7, knight e1, queen c7, rook c1. Okay, Levy castles, knight d3. Again, not the best way to play here. Generally, you want to exchange the light square bishops. Basically, you want this sort of position rather than this position, because now the bishop on f5 is really good. It's just keeping an eye on both diagonals. So now f6 is played here by Levy. Pawn takes, bishop takes, knight to c5, trade, e5 played by Levy. Okay, it's complicated. I don't know if I like the way Levy has played this, though. I mean, knight c5 takes. I mean, maybe already you kind of have to play like this with e5, but it feels a little bit dicey after bishop g4 for white. I mean, also because white can play like c3 and queen a4 here, and white has some play. So I wonder if Levy didn't do something wrong here. Maybe castles was premature. I'm not sure. I also was wondering about c5. I mean, like maybe not queen, maybe even just c5 here. Oh, it's the best move. Okay, what a surprise. But because somehow after this knight jumps to c5, this knife on c5, it's similar to the f5 square. Since the blacking is castle to the queen side, it looks a little bit strange. So e5, bishop g4, trades, king b8, knight to e6, queen c8, takes, rook e1. Let me think about this for a second. What is the move here for white? Computer says f4 is apparently really good. Hard move to play. I don't think you would expect that from a 2187. So rook e1, rook d6. Wait, Levy won this game? Wait, seriously? Takes rook e5. I mean, Levy's just completely lost here. He won this game? Okay, knight g6, queen h3, c5, and now just rook e2. Okay, I mean, I'm kind of surprised. Why not look at his review for his understanding? Because I'm not going to spend the time watching that. Also, additionally, frankly, I'm trying to do a general review for everyone who's watching, so I'm not going to do that. So c5, rook e8, rook e1, rook a6 is played here. But again, like already here, it definitely feels wrong. I would say in this position, like it's definitely a little bit dubious. Different perspectives are better. Yeah. Also, additionally, again, and people will take this the wrong way, no doubt, because they're going to think that I'm intentionally pogging. But the fact is, like, my understanding of this position for you guys and giving it, it's more important because I have a better understanding of this. So you're going to get a much better, more objective view of the of what's going on. So rook takes e6 is played here, and actually this is so right around here. Let's look at this position. Let's think about this for a second, because it feels like right around here white has to be better. So queen h3 c5. I mean, is it rook e2? Is rook e2 the right move or wrong? I mean, computer says rook e3. I mean, again, I mean, if Fabiano is playing with the white pieces here, for example, I mean, Fabiano finds all the best moves and he just wins this position very smoothly with white. But can we really expect a 2180 to find these moves? Probably not. Probably not. I don't think you can expect that out of 2180. So it probably remains very, very complicated here objectively. So rook e2. Rook e8, rook e1, rook a6 is played here. F3. Now this looks like F3 looks like just a bad move. I mean, Levy takes, and yeah, I mean, I think white's probably okay here, but after rook e6 knight f4, from a practical standpoint, it's very hard for white to play here, because even though white has 2 rooks for a queen, objectively, that's always, you always have to worry about forks. You have to worry about d4 and c4, so it's not surprising that Levy goes on to win here. So rook e2 is played. Again, very important that white does not give up the pawn on c2. Like if you go rook e3 to guard f3 after queen c2, black gets a passed d pawn, and black is simply winning here. So rook e2 is played. Queen f3, rook e3, queen f4, king g2, g4.
LD2775.
I don't know if I love g4. I mean, it has some merit to it, but I was thinking that if your opponent's low on time here, and you're trying to if you're trying to like create like tricks here and make it more complicated, I don't know if you want to go g4, because that's one less trick. Like I thought maybe you could go h5, h4, and g4 as well. Like h5 keeps more tension. So g4 is not a bad move, but if your opponent's low on time, I do wonder if you can't keep more tension in the position. It's not about the pure best move. It's about the fact that your opponent's low on time and you want to give him more opportunities to go wrong. So he plays g4 takes, king f2, d4. Again, not my favorite move here because this is very committal. When you play d4, the problem with this move is that when you push pawns forward, you have to be very careful, because once you push them forward, you can never move them backwards. And so like you kind of want to keep the pawns alive here until you're sure that you're going to be able to create a passed pawn. It's a situation where pushing can be, it can kind of backfire in a way, because now white has a very simple plan of playing like b3 and preventing you from ever getting passed pawn. Okay, rook a3. Okay, this is not a move that I like. I do not like this move at all here. Not that it's a bad move, but because white can very simply play like rook g3 and start to set up the fortress. For example, let me just make some random moves. If you get this position, this is definitely a draw, because now black can never create a passed pawn. All my pawns cover the critical squares, so you can never get a connected passed pawn here with b5, c4, d3. The opponent had no time at this point. Yeah, but that's also another thing that I would say is when your opponent doesn't have time, at certain moments, it's more important to keep the position complicated, where they have to think about more moves than trying to look for the absolute best move. That is something that does matter at times. So rook a3, I don't like. Rook g3. But again, okay, h5, I like h5. Rook g6. Okay, I mean, I guess his opponent was worried about h4, h3, but I mean, if you go b3, h4, just I mean, there are many ways you can play. You can play rook f3, rook d3, like even rook d3 potentially I think is a draw, because you're going to get the same setup. You can again get a4, and you create this chain of pawns, so black can never create a passed pawn. So there's a pure blockade, and now you can just sit forever with, like, you can do a rook f2 e2, king g1 g2, maybe even h3. Like you got some position like this, I mean, you just forget about it. Black can never win. You can just sit forever. Here, you just sit forever. You just sit here, and you just sit. And there's no way that the black can ever break through. This is a very clean fortress. In fact, as I said before, everything is perfectly placed here. So everything holds it together, and you go get your coffee or whatever else you want to drink in Vegas, and it's just an easy draw. So instead he plays rook g6, which I think, again, low on time, so you can't really fault him, but he really should have been looking for themes here of like, what are black's ideas? Black can either try to do something tricky here on the king side with like h4, queen g4, h3, or you can try c4 d3 to create a passed pawn. But if black can't really create a passed pawn on the center of the board, it's very iffy if these h4 ideas are ever going to work here. Who drinks coffee in Vegas? Maybe that's true. I don't know. Anyway, all right. So, okay, so rook g6 is first sort of move in the wrong direction. h3, queen f7. Yeah, I like queen f7. Again, h3 makes sense, but now your rooks are lacking coordination, so there are going to be tricks like queen f7 here. Rook g3, which hangs a2, and now I think you're going to lose the game. Probably the last try is maybe like rook e6, although actually there's queen f5 here, so maybe it's already gone. I mean, this is one thing that you need to remember when you have two rooks against the queen. You need to keep the rooks sort of connected. They need to be really close to each other, because if they start getting separated, bad things happen, because the queen obviously can move all over the board in all different directions. So queen f7 is a good move. Rook g3, queen a2, and now the problem that you'll see here is that white will not be able to stop black from getting past pawn. Even if you get like some position like I'll just make some random moves, some position like this, you'll see that because I have the 3 pawns, I can now push c4 and my pawn connects, and then I'm going to get a pass pawn eventually. Now, that's not to say this is winning. I still think with correct play this is a draw, but it's already gone very, very wrong here for white. Now, conversely, if you go back here and white has his pawn in a4, again, it's an easy draw. So rook b3, king c6, rook e6, king d5, rook h6, queen b1, rook b7, queen c2, king g3, queen f5, and pretty much not much that I think needs to be said here. Looks pretty routine. King c4 takes, and just d3. Yeah, whether king c4 is best or not doesn't matter, because Levy understands one key point here, which is that you need to push the d pawn to the end of the board and create a queen. That's the only thing that really matters here. So d3 check, king b3, rook b7, king a2, black takes, rook c4, queen e6. Okay, I mean, Levy kind of lets us get a little bit iffy. Like here, I don't know. I unless I'm missing something, I think just d2 just wins on the spot with queen e2. Like, I don't like that Levy took on b2. He could have just played b2 and then queen e2 and d1, and it's a very easy win, because after this, like, I mean, it's still winning, but you do run some risk of some weird trick with your king getting checkmated on the edge of the board. So rook c3, king a4, and here his opponent resigns. Again, obviously if you take on d3, there's queen e4. If you go rook c1, there are many ways to win, but just queen d5 collecting the rook is the first one. Or queen e4. Both moves just win the rook on b7 here. Yeah, I mean, king b2 is completely fine objectively, but it allows some weird things to potentially happen. There's just no need for king b2. Just d2 and just win the game. Just no nonsense. Even if king b2 is still winning, no nonsense. Just find the simple, clean, technical win where your opponent has no way to stop it. So maybe not thrilled by that, but again, the game is kind of over at this point. I would say overall pretty good game by Levy. Opening was very shaky. I guess it's not really that surprising. Middle game and end game, though, I think overall were pretty good. Once he got the worst position, he found some critical moves, like knight g6 is a good move, c5 is a good move, rook a6 I think is also a good move, and then finding rook e6. So I would say overall pretty good game by Levy. As far as his opponent goes, what I would say is that, and this is one thing that I've said before, that I will say again, which is, a lot of people these days, and I say this because I know his opponent is a younger player, but a lot of players these days, they really worry too much about looking at the engine. They look at the engine line too often, and they don't look for like pure, they don't look for positional concepts or like fundamental ideas in the position. They worry too much about just looking move by move by move by move. And I think if the white player here had been thinking conceptually about this position, for example, like right here, even you think about it, like right about here, you should be thinking already, what are the ideas for both sides? First of all, black doesn't really have a whole lot of play here on the king side, right? Like, you can go h5, g4. You're not really going to be winning. It's a queen and one pawn. For example, let's say I'm just going to make some, I know king h1 allows mate, so I'll just wait on g1. If you got some position like this, pawn's going nowhere. Your pawn and your rook cover the g3 square. So like the queen and the pawn don't do anything on the king side here. So that's number one. Number two is, let's say black plays g4, some position like this. Is black really getting through? Even if I just keep waiting and you get the pawn down to h3, I can always just go rook g3. And again, I mean, mind you, this position is bad for other reasons, but let's just say, let me put this position. If you look at this position, the pawn on h3 is not going anywhere. The pawn on h2 glues the rook to g3, and even if you get queen c1, you just come up with a king. So everything's really holding together on the king side. So now if you think about it, there's nothing happening on the king side. So you really shouldn't be worried about king side ideas with the queen and 2 pawns. So there's no real king side threats. So now you have to think about, well, what else can my opponent do here now? The other thing you can think about in this position is, well, black wants to create a pass pawn in the center or pick off some of these brittle pawns which are not protected on b2 and a2 specifically. So you really need to take those things into account and think about that, about what your opponent is trying to do, rather than just going move by move in this position, which is what I feel like black was doing. So that's what I would say. Levy is playing a 1900 next. Wait, seriously? Levy's playing a 1900 in round 3 on 2 out of 3? That's crazy. That's insane. Thank you to Slav 1K for the 2 months, LD for the 11, Hookah the King for the 6, and Hash City for the 6, and thank you to Stremsley for the 3. Appreciate it. All right, so let's move on. We have one more game that we want to go over. Where was it? Oh, I thought I had one more game. Just give me 1 second. 1 second. Where is the previous game? I guess I don't have it here, so let me load this one. I'll reload. Okay, so we'll go over this game. This is the game between Hans Niemann and Justin Wang. This game I did not see, by the way, at all. We'll look at it from the white perspective. Hans has the white pieces, so e4 knight or d4 knight f6, c4 e6, knight to c3, bishop b4, pretty standard. We have the Nimzo Indian, e3 castles. Hans plays bishop d3, d5 knight f3, b6 here, which is a little bit dubious. Normally black plays c5, and after castles, takes. We have the very famous this is the very, I mean, b6 is a move, knight d7 is a move, but this is the very famous Karpov variation in the Nimzo Indian. However, in this game, Hans' opponent plays b6. Reasonable move, but I think c5 is considered to be better these days. So takes castles, bishop a6 played here, white trades, queen a4 is played here, queen to c8 is played by Justin Wang. Hans goes bishop d2. Logical moves, play rook c1 here, try to put pressure on the c file. Also, you can put the other rook on d1 to target d5 in the long term after black goes c5 and you trade pawns. So bishop d6, rook to c1 is played here, or rook fc1. Tough decision here, very tough decision. I mean, I don't know if rook c1 is right. Objectively, I think it's wrong, and I'll tell you why I think it's wrong. I think the rooks belong on c1 and d1 for a couple of reasons. First of all, on rook d1, just to highlight the point, let's say you get some position like this. The rook on d1 targets the pawn, and you can always go rook c1 to put pressure on the c file. So that's the first reason I think the rook belongs in d1. Secondly, I do understand why Hans put this rook on c1. His idea was that by putting the f rook on c1, he thought he could play rook a b1 and b4 and prevent c5. So it's a very committal decision, because basically if c5 doesn't work here and white gets rook b1 and b4, white's much better, if not positionally winning. But if black can get c5, then rook fc1 is not the right decision. So it's a very tough decision, but I think objectively this is not the right rook to put on c1. So c5 is played here by Justin. Hans takes, Justin takes, Hans goes queen d4, queen b7, and now you see the problem with the f rook being on c1, which is that in this position, if I can go back here, and let's say I played this position, takes here, queen d4, queen b7, and rook d1, this is very, very good for white, because white has rooks on c1 and d1 here, and the rooks are perfectly placed. The d5 pawn is weak. Long term, this could become an open file. So this is the ideal placement of the two towers, where in the game, as we see, it's still completely fine for white, but the problem is now you're gonna have to waste time. You're gonna have to go rook d1 and then rook c1, because if you get the rook to b1, I mean, even if you get some b4 move, like what's going on, like your rook is nothing, it's just sitting behind a pawn, so it's not really well placed here. So objectively, this I would say it was a positional mistake by Hans to play rook fc1, but very, very hard very, very hard to really fault him, because it was just a decision he made. I think it's a very minor thing, but objectively it isn't the best way to play it. So all right, so queen b7, knight b5 played here by Hans, bishop e7, b4. So Hans tries to open up the c file here. Very logical idea. Knight to e6 played, queen to d3, rook f c8. Hans goes bishop e1. I don't know if this is the best move or not. Very prophylactic move, but nothing really wrong with it, to be frank. Basically, it avoids, like, if black ever goes knight e4, there's nothing on d2 to be attacked. So very prophylactic move, but nothing, can't really fault it. I think it's completely fine. So knight e4, rook d1, bishop f6 is played, and now rook a b1. Okay, this is an interesting decision. I don't like rook b1 at all. Why did Hans not go rook c1 here? Very strange. I mean, I'm wondering why did Hans not go rook c1? Very strange. I don't understand rook b1 at all, because after rook b1, like, you're just, black controls the c file, so it really makes sense to trade off some rooks, especially because the one advantage white has is the pawn on d5 being weak. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe Hans was worried that basically Justin can just trade rooks and play like a6, and it's like, it's going to be hard to win because you have one less set of rooks on the board. So I don't know. I mean, that's the only reason I can think of for Hans playing rook b1, is that basically thought, well, you know, if I go rook c1, rooks are going to come off the board and I'm not going to have winning chances and the game might end in a draw. That's the only justification that I can really come up with for playing rook b1. So I mean, I don't know. So he goes rook a b1, a6, knight d4. Okay, black goes rook c4, and now you really, as you look at the position, now rook b1 really doesn't make any sense, because now black sort of gets a bastion for the rook on c4. It's firmly planted here. It targets the knight on d4. Black will also double stack and take the c file here. So I really, yeah, rook a b1 is just a bad move by Hans. My instinct is that Hans did, he's like, if I go rook c1, rooks come off, it's going to be a draw. I have to try to keep the game alive, to try and win the game, because the guy's like 2300. That's my guess. So knight e2, rook d8. Okay, h3, g6 played here. Love g6, great move. Opens up the diagonal for the bishop. It also creates lift for the king as well. So a3 played by Hans, logical move to support the pawn on b4. b5, queen b3, queen c6, rook d3, a5. Nice move here. Of course, white can't take, because then I go knight c5 and I fork the queen and the rook. So a5, queen, rook d1. Wait, Justin Wang is 2475 FIDE. Okay, well, if his opponent is actually like 2500 FIDE, I think that's a very poor decision by Hans, assuming that I'm right on my logic that he didn't play rook c1 because he thought it would just be a draw. But if that's true and he played it because he wanted to win the game, that's just that's a lack of objectivity on Hans's part, because at 2475 you should not be gambling like this. You should not be gambling at all. So that's what I would say. You should not be gambling. So a4 is played here. Queen to d1, knight to g5 played here. Okay, now knight g5 I really don't like. In fact, I don't like a4. Why don't you just take and sort of try to claim both the open files here? Like, white has a passive bishop. Like, I don't know. You can't really go d4 here. I mean, you can't really go rook a8 either, because then you lose the pawn. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's already gone wrong here. I liked a5, but maybe it's wrong. Maybe here, computer's already kind of, maybe queen c6 is wrong. So why does the computer say, okay, let's say h5, rook d3. Why does the computer think this is so good for black? It doesn't. It's just at low depth. So it's just at low depth. So it doesn't really have a good conceptual plan. Anyway, all right. So rook d1, a4, queen b1, knight g5 played here. So white goes knight f4. Queen b6. I do not like queen b6 at all here. I think I would have just traded everything down here. If white takes, black is much better here, because you get, like, I think you can even do the legendary triple stack. And you can also put the knight on e6 to close this other open file, and then you hit the pawn on d4. So you have the legendary triple on the only open file. So you have to take with a rook. We trade, and I don't know. I feel like knight e6 and rook d1, d4. I mean, maybe this is only equal, but I don't know. I wouldn't like this, because also when you look at the position, your dark square bishop can't touch anything. Black has 5 pawns that are on light squares. It's like in any kind of endgame like this, all the pawns are on light squares. So the only thing that white has here is maybe try to create a battery on a diagonal to checkmate. But objectively, it has to be fine for black, because everything's on the opposite color of the dark square bishop. Anyway, so queen b6 is played here. Hans goes bishop c3. Good move, activating the bishop. Now it's not passive, and you can maybe even hope for some kind of advantage long term potentially. So knight e4, bishop b2, rook c8, trade, fe6 supports the pawn now, trade, queen a1, knight e4, f3. I don't love f3 here, but there might not be anything better. The reason I don't love f3 is because now you open up threats on this diagonal potentially, but at the same time, if you don't play f3, rook c2, there could be a lot of problems. So I don't love f3, but I actually don't know if there's anything really better. So knight d6, queen e5, knight f7, queen g3, rook c2, knight d4, of course, by Hans, rook a2, f4, knight d6, queen g5, knight e4. Wait a second. Queen e7, I guess, because now if you go knight f2, I just take and I create the checkmate here. So you have to go queen d6, queen b7, good move. Of course, if you trade, you can't really do this because then I get Castlemania on the 7th rank and white's losing the game here. So queen b7 is played, rook b8, queen a7, rook c8, queen a5. Of course, again, if you take, you still get checkmated by rook c2. Or maybe not. Maybe rook c2 is not right. I saw the bar jump way up and down. I guess it says you go queen d8, queen h4, and you have all kinds of checkmates here as well. So anyway, queen a5, knight f2. Wait, knight f2, knight b5, queen e7. So black's gonna win material here, or is he? Queen a6, rook c4, knight c3, rook c2. This is getting very, very wild. Wait, what's going on here? This is really wild. So rook c2. So you're still under attack. Both your rooks are under attack, and black is also attacking the knight as well. So it goes rook d2. Takes. Wait, computer says this is winning somehow. It looked like. No, computer's just slow. Okay, so rook c3, rook d3 played here. I mean, I'd be very scared here if I was Hans, because again, his king is very open. The black king is kind of open, although it can run to h6 very easily with the pawn protection in front, whereas this white king is wide open here. So rook c1, king g2, queen f6, rook d2, g5, rook f2, queen f5, king h2. I mean, again, you have to be so careful. I don't know if I love g5 though. Actually, I don't think I like g5 here, because you're kind of opening up your king as well here. There could be threats towards the king on g8, so I don't know if I love that move. I probably would have just gone queen f5. Now I know the computer says it's just zeros, but like queen f5, king a2, and then I don't know, like queen e4, and rook g2, and computer still says this is a draw because of queen d6. Okay, again, I mean, this is really asking a lot out of these players, finding moves like queen d6, because the reason this is a draw is because now you can just check, and when the king comes up, you still have this check. So the queen kind of gets in behind the enemy pawns here, and will be able to create a repetition of moves, but very, very difficult and hard to find, considering I'm sure both players were low on time here. So g5, rook f2, queen f5, king h2, rook c2. Of course, now queen e4 runs into rook g2, and now it's, you know, the classic call the ambulance, but not for me, because the black king is also getting attacked here. So rook c2, trade, king g1, check. Hans blocks correctly. Queen c3. I think you can maybe take. I'm not sure, but no, you can't. It loses apparently. But anyway, there's also no reason to do so. Queen c3, fg5, queen a3, queen b5, queen b2, a3. Good understanding from Justin Wang here, knowing that in queen and pawn endgames, one thing that's really important to note is that in queen and pawn endgames, you really, if you have passed pawns and you can sort of force that pawn down the board, it's very good counterplay, because many times in queen and pawn endgames, you can't really stop the pawn with only queens on the board. So a3, check here, check, takes here. And again, basically Justin is willing to give up all these pawns in the center, because once the pawn gets down to the end of the board, you can't stop the pawn, so you have to make a repetition. So very good fundamentals of very good fundamentals here from Justin, understanding that like these two pawns in the middle of the board, they don't matter at all if you can get this pawn down to the end of the board, because white's going to have to make a repetition. So okay, so here we are, takes, queen e7, check, h4, queen a1 is played. Actually, nice little trick here, because if you go a2, white can play h5 here, I think. Or maybe no, computer says it's zeros. It says what, queen e7? Or maybe the computer's crazy. In this game, the computer keeps getting it wrong. But you do have an idea with h5 here. Again, the idea is that black queens, you can make a checkmate here. Queen covers all the critical squares. King can't go anywhere. So this is just simply checkmate. And if after h6, white checks, you go here. And I guess the point is if white plays g6, you have the amazing resource queen g7, not queen, because if you make a queen again, you get checkmated like this. But after queen g7, apparently you're holding because white can't check, because then you make a check, and after queens come off, you're going to make a new queen. So apparently it's still... Wait, is this winning? No, the computer's crazy. You guys just saw it. It said plus 2.3 and then it went to 0. So still a draw, but of course no reason to go for it. So Justin plays queen a1, very nice move, of course, tries to check from behind with the queen, but also guards the pawn, very important. It stays really close and tight with this pawn at a3 to not blunder it. So queen e7, king g8, check, and I think here the players agree to a draw because of the fact that after king g8, now if white tries like h5, actually let's say white checks and tries h5 with the same mating idea, black can go queen f1, king g3, queen g1, and actually the computer says after king f3 you can even grab the pawn, you're winning, but at the very least you have a draw. So Hans takes a draw very, very prudently at this point. Very tough game. I mean, I think both players played a pretty good game. I think Hans played well at various times. I mean, he made a couple of inaccuracies. Like without knowing Hans's thought process, it's hard to be overly critical. But if my assumption is correct about this game and Hans in this position played this move rook a b1. Let me find the position. Where was it? Yeah, so like if my assumption about rook a b1 is that Hans played this because he wanted to win the game and he thought after rook c1 pieces were coming off the board, he needs to reset that and be a little bit more objective about these sorts of moves. Because to me, I can't really come up with a good reason to play rook b1 other than that. Now, I could be completely overthinking it, obviously. I mean, the way that I view it is certainly different than the way Hans views it. But the only thing I can think of that Hans did it because he basically wanted to keep rooks on the board. Why would Justin just allow a draw? Because he had to, otherwise he would have lost the game. So yeah, maybe it was a mouse slip. I know you guys are being funny, but yeah, if Hans did it to keep the game alive rather than trading rooks, I think Hans needs to be much more objective. On the other hand, if Hans did it for another reason, I would just say he needs to think more deeply about the position. Because the only reason I see you playing rook b1 is because you think you play rook c1, more pieces come off the board, and the game's going to be a draw. That's the only logical explanation that I can think of with where I'm at. So that's what I would say. All right. So I think those are the two games we have from Las Vegas.